Notice! Sorry.
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Well, another Halloween is upon us yet again. Trick-or-treaters may or may not be out due to the pandemic. People are watching Halloween specials on the television. But do you know what some people really associate Halloween with? Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo, created by Hanna-Barbera Productions, started its run in 1969. Airing with many cartoons, TV specials, some big screen movies and various spin-offs. And it's needless to say that Scooby-Doo has become one of the most popular and most profitable franchises from Hanna-Barbera, since it's the one that gets adapted the most.
Well, obviously.
And this year Warner Brothers came out with a brand new, should have been big screen movie that went straight to streaming film, titled Scoob. Scoob is a 2020 American computer-animated supernatural adventure mystery comedy film produced by Warner Animation Group and based on Hanna-Barbera's Scooby-Doo franchise. The movie is set up to be the start of a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, since Warner Brothers didn't really do a great job with the DC extended universe. So they thought, let's try again with Hanna-Barbera. It was originally set for a worldwide theatrical release in May 15, 2020. But it was sent straight to digital streaming due to the COVID-19 pandemic closing all the cinemas in the world. So can Scoob hold up the legacy of Mystery Inc. as well as Hanna-Barbera in general? Let's take a look and find out. A young Shaggy Rogers befriends and adopts a talking stray dog, whom he names Scooby-Dooby-Doo. On Halloween night, Scooby and Shaggy meet three young detectives named Fred Jones, Daphne Blake and Velma Dinkley before venturing into a haunted house. Inside, the kids encounter a ghost, whom they capture and unmask as a costume thief, Mr. Rigby. Inspired by the experience, they decide to form a group, Mystery Inc., to solve mysteries together. 10 years later, Mystery Inc. goes into business with entrepreneur Colossal Prick, Simon Cowell, as their investor. But Shaggy and Scooby are excluded as Cowell refuses to do business with them. Later that night, Shaggy and Scooby are attacked at the bowling alley by small robots called Rottens. The pair are rescued by Dee Dee Sykes, Dynamite, and a masked superhero, Blue Falcon. The Rottens are then revealed to belong to supercriminal Dick Dastardly, who wants to capture Scooby-Doo as part of a plan involving the mystery behind Three Skulls of Cerberus. Meanwhile, Fred, Daphne, and Velma discover that Scooby and Shaggy are with Blue Falcon before Dastardly imprisons them. Escaping with the help of one of the Rottens, they make contact with Dee Dee via Dynamite. Velma explains that she and others are being taken to Messick Mountain, where the last skull is located. The group finds out that Dastardly's plans are to open the gates to the underworld in order to rescue his dog Muttley, who was trapped during an attempt to steal the underworld's riches, and Dastardly needs Scooby-Doo because he is the only one who can unlock the gates. And all this leads to a wacky superhero adventure with various Hanna-Barbera characters including Dynamite, Blue Falcon, and Captain Caveman, to name a few. So what do I think of Scooby-Doo's newest movie? I love it to bits. When I first saw a poster for this movie in the cinema, I remember thinking to myself, oh great, another movie that we never asked for. But I was still kind of interested to go see it because I did grow up with Scooby-Doo and I was kind of interested to see what the movie would be like. And after watching the trailers, it had me immediately hooked when they revealed Dick Dastardly to be the main villain because he's one of my favourite characters of all time. As I mentioned earlier, this was the start of a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, where Warner Brothers decided to try and make a cinematic universe starring Hanna-Barbera characters, and it made sense to start with Scooby-Doo since he's the most profitable character in the Hanna-Barbera lineup. And speaking of characters, this movie is not shy of them. You have Shaggy and Scooby-Doo voiced by Frank Welker and Will Forte, two best friends and carrots who love Scooby snacks and like to goof off every now and then. Scooby is the only character to be voiced by one of the original voice actors, Frank Welker. While it is very weird that Frank Welker's the only original Scooby-Doo actor who comes in to voice the character, I think it does the film justice. He's the lovable mutt who's afraid of a lot of things and gets involved in this big adventure with his best friend Shaggy Rogers. And Shaggy, like Scooby, is a coward, and like Scooby, he loves to eat and loves to goof off every now and then. But the two have a great way of using disguises to get out of various situations. And I've heard that Shaggy's current voice actor, Matthew Lillard, was quite upset that he didn't get asked to play the character. And I have to admit, I thought it was a missed opportunity too, because he's been voicing the character for a while and we practically know him as Shaggy now. But to Will Forte's credit, he does do a pretty good job at bringing out Shaggy's voice, sounding very much like Shaggy at moments, except for a lot of emotional moments. But all in all, he does do a pretty decent job. Out of all the actors to play Mystery Inc., Will Forte does try his best to voice Shaggy. And in most parts, his voice is almost identical to the original.
Do you realize where we are?
No.
Look around, man! The clean, modern aesthetic, the cool blue color palette. We're in
IKEA.
the Falcon Fury! Did you say IKEA?
Nope, I said Falcon Fury, just like you.
There's Velma, Fred and Daphne, the other members of Mystery Inc., with Velma being the brains of the operation, Fred being the leader, and Daphne the one that usually gets kidnapped. Of course, we don't see them in the film as much as Shaggy and Scooby, but they do their job as supporting characters. And one thing I find quite funny in this movie is how Fred seems to be in love with the Mystery Machine. Now, I have yet to see him have a crush on the Mystery Machine in any other Scooby-Doo media that I've watched. Or maybe I just haven't been seeing the right ones just yet. There's Brian, aka Blue Falcon, the son and the successor of the original Blue Falcon. Now bear in mind, when I first saw this version of Blue Falcon in the trailers, I remember thinking to myself, this isn't the Blue Falcon I remember. But then they managed to justify it by writing in it it's the original Blue Falcon's son. Now he's the kind of guy who's trying to live up to the legacy of his father, but just can't really succeed at it and is kind of a goofball. Part of it is the fact that Mark Wahlberg voiced him, and he has a knack for voicing goofball characters like in Ted. And with his sidekick Dynamite Dog Wonder being the brains of the operation, it's kind of like the whole role reversal gag. Because if most of you can remember from the original Blue Falcon cartoons, Blue Falcon was the brains of the operation and Dynamite was the goofball. But here it's the other way around. And as much as I miss the old goofy, idiotic Dynamite, I have to admit I do like how snarky this version of Dynamite is, poking fun at how numbskullish and full of himself Brian can be at times. There's Dee Dee Sykes, the aide of the Blue Falcon who pilots the Falcon Fury. For those of you who don't remember who Dee Dee Sykes is, she was one of the main characters in the Captain Caveman show, and she's the second brains of the operation compared to Blue Falcon, the one who pilots the ship and the only other one of the group besides Dynamite that takes the mission seriously. And as a special treat, they've thrown in Captain Caveman, a fur-covered caveman superhero who resides in Messick Mountain. Most people were introduced to Captain Caveman via the TV show that he was originally created for. But the first time I ever saw the character was in the Flintstones Kids, where he and his son was the cartoon within the cartoon show. And while he doesn't speak in the same mannerisms as Mel Blanc did in the original cartoons, Tracy Morgan does give a likeable charm to the character. And it's great that they got him to say the famous catchphrase. While this movie showcases some other great Hanna-Barbera characters besides Mystery Inc., for me the highlight of the movie was Dick Dastardly.
Nobody gets away from Dick Dastardly!
A criminal mastermind plotting to obtain treasure from the Greek underworld and rescue his dog Muttley. Dick Dastardly, as most of you will remember, will come from Wacky Racers and Dastardly and Muttley in their flying machines. As soon as the second trailer for the movie announced Dick Dastardly was going to be the main villain, it immediately had me hooked. Because Dick Dastardly is one of my favourite villains of all time, as well as one of my favourite Hanna-Barbera characters. And as I was hoping, he still maintains that likeable personality that made him so much fun to watch in the original cartoons. And Jason Isaacs from the Harry Potter films just brings the character to life so superbly.
Join me, Scooby-Doo, and I will show you how to harness your destiny and become the most important dog in the world.
No thanks, Dastardly.
Oh, please. My friends call me Dick.
Okay. Rick.
No, I'm not a Rick. I'm a Dick with a D.
Rick with a D.
Da-da-da, Dick.
Well, Rick.
Dick, Dick, Dick!
Good night, everybody.
And there's even been one moment where I've detected a little bit of the original actor Paul Winchell in his voice.
Double dress.
Every time Dastardly appeared on screen, he practically stole the movie, just like he did in the Wacky Races cartoon. This guy is just a delight to watch every second he's on screen. An extra nice touch with Dastardly is the fact that his ship looks exactly like the Mean Machine from Wacky Races. It's just awesome that they would go out of their way to make his airship look like his racing car. And while his dog sidekick Muttley doesn't have a big role in the film, his role is very vital. Here's an interesting bit of trivia about Muttley in this movie. For the majority of his dialogue, Billy West did his voice, but for the laughing they just used archive recordings of Don Messick. Which I honestly think makes sense because several other actors have tried to mimic that laugh, but none of them have quite succeeded, so it only makes sense to use the original recordings for the original actor. And that's the same thing they did with Snoopy when they did the Peanuts movie. Use archive recordings of the original actor rather than trying to get someone to imitate him. And in some cases that usually works to his advantage because, like I said, some actors just can't get to those voices the same level that the originals did. And who knows, we could get more of Dastardly and Muttley in a future Hanna-Barbera film. And I really hope so, because Dastardly stole the movie for me. And working alongside Dastardly are the Rottens, a gang of robots created by Dastardly that could transform into anything. They start off with this sweet and adorable appearance that makes them look like babies, but they can turn into these scorpion-like creatures with chainsaws and lasers, and even have the ability to disguise themselves as bowling balls and bowling pins. It's one of those wacky robots that looks sweet and innocent at first, but then when it shows its true colours, it's really threatening. I mean, their personalities aren't that threatening, I mean, they're still the cutesy little robots, but they're definitely not to be underestimated when they're working for Dick Dastardly. This of course wouldn't be a great Hanna-Barbera movie if they didn't throw in some great Hanna-Barbera references to previous shorts that they've done. Like, if you look very carefully in the background, you can see a few nods to other characters and people who worked on the original cartoons. Like the lady who works at the bowling alley that's named after the famous designer from Scooby-Doo, Iro Takamoto. And Messick Mountain was named after Don Messick, the original voice of Muttley. And in one scene you can see a poster of the Hex Girls, who were first introduced in Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. There's even a Hong Kong Furry arcade game, that's just a nice touch. And even throw in a Banana Splits poster not far away from the Hex Girls poster. And as much as I hate the guy, Simon Cowell playing himself in the movie is a great nod to the new Scooby-Doo movies, where they'd have various celebrities and famous characters appear in the mysteries. In the first 10 minutes where we see Scooby and the gang as kids, there's a nice sort of callback to a pup named Scooby-Doo. Just a few touches like that just makes this a really nice Hanna-Barbera movie, in my opinion. Being set in the modern day world, then you'd obviously expect to see this have references to modern day things like, say, IKEA and Netflix.
And apparently he's been stealing Netflix by using his mother's account.
That is not fair for the rest of us who have to pay for Netflix.
You have to pay for Netflix?
But one of my favourites is when they're on the Falcon Fury and Scooby mistakes it for IKEA. Being someone who's visited IKEA regularly, I just find that amusing. And speaking of references, I'm very sure that that Hall of Mirrors scene where Dastardly confronts Scooby-Doo is based on Batman the Killing Joke. It just looks very similar to me. While this movie is animated in CGI, it does do its best to make it traditional cartoon slapstick. But maybe at times it could get a little too cartoony. I can see why that would have worked better with 2D animation. Now this movie had quite a fair bit of criticism from some of the viewers, saying that it didn't feel like a Scooby-Doo movie after the first 10 minutes. And I can understand where they're coming from. I mean, when you watch the first 10 minutes of the movie, it is like watching a Scooby-Doo episode. But then the rest of the film just turns into a wacky superhero film, where Scooby-Doo and the gang thrown into the mix. But I honestly don't mind that, because it takes the gang and gives them a different adventure to go on besides just a man in a mask and pretending to be a monster or a ghost. And I think some people forget that we've had some Scooby-Doo films and projects with different stories in the past, like Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island having the zombies and monsters be real. So in all honesty, I think it's a nice change to have the gang go on this big adventure that's different from a ghost that's actually a man in a mask. Though some people may disagree with me, but I personally think it's a welcome change. And it does a good job of setting up this Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. And despite what some people have said about it, it's still a better cinematic universe film than Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. Scoob is a film that takes what we love about Scooby-Doo and Dick Dastardly and Muttley and various Hanna-Barbera characters and merges it into one film that makes a Kickstarter for a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. And while it's not one of the best movies I've ever seen, I think it does its job really well. But my main criticism of it is that I never got to watch it in the cinemas. Because it was intended to be shown on the big screen, I think we would have all gotten a better experience of it. My guess is Warner Brothers didn't want to risk delaying it for too long and losing the hype for it. But it's great that we still got to see it and it didn't get delayed multiple times like the James Bond movie or The Kingsman, two other films that I really want to go see next year. So in my opinion, Scoob is a great way to introduce us to a new Hanna-Barbera cinematic franchise, reintroducing us to the original Mystery Inc. gang, bringing in some Hanna-Barbera characters that are long forgotten, and bringing them into a great story which is very entertaining. So if you want a fun Hanna-Barbera film, then Scoob is definitely the one to go to. Not one of the best Hanna-Barbera movies, but one of the best Hanna-Barbera movies that we've gotten in a while. It shows a majority of the characters you love, and some characters that you may have forgotten about that could be introduced to a new generation. And if you haven't seen this movie yet, I'd highly recommend checking it out if you're a Hanna-Barbera fan, Scooby-Doo fan, or Fanimation fan in general. You'll get some laughs out of it, you'll have a nice time watching Scooby and the gang go off on this big adventure, and if you're a lover of wacky races like I am, then you'll be delighted at the antics Dick Dastardly gets up to. It's a fun animated film that I feel is worth a watch. I hope you all have a very happy Halloween, folks, whatever you decide to do this year. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks.
Double threat.